right, welcome to Recruiting is No Joke. I am your host, Joel Lalgee. I am super excited to be here with you guys. As always, I have an amazing guest. I think we're going to get a ton of value. We've already kind of had a whole podcast session offline, but now we're going to bring it.
Press record?
Yeah, we're pressing record, so we're live. Sarika, great to have you with us. Why don't you give us like the Twitter bio? Who are you, and what do you do, and who do you do it for?
Okay, I'm always bad at this question, Joel. You think
check out my LinkedIn.
I know. Just look at my.
Thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of Recruiting is No Joke. This episode was brought to you by Interactive EQ, a one-of-a-kind talent assessment platform that measures how people would handle real-life situations. The assessments can be best described as an interactive, movie-like experience where the talent plays a first-person character in the story. You can check out what they do here at www.interactiveeq.com and tell them that Joel sent you. We all know that hiring is so much more than just a resume, and now you can find out how candidates will actually react in real-life situations. It's amazing. I've never seen anything like it, and you're definitely going to want to check it out. Now, back to this week's episode. Thanks so much again. We couldn't do it without you.
I am Sarika Lamont. Thanks so much for having me, Joel. Right now, my day job, I am the VP of People and Culture at Vidyard. Vidyard is an an AI video-based go-to-market tool, often used in sales and marketing workflows. A lot of cool stuff happening in the world of Vidyard right now with AI and AI avatars and video sales agents. So definitely take some time to check it out. Vidyard is a Canadian-based company based out of Kitchener-Waterloo, but I am actually based in Virginia. I'm about 40 minutes west of Washington, D.C., so I can't really say I'm from DC. I'm actually from Virginia. I own all things people and culture, everything underneath that. So from talent acquisition, all the things in between, getting people onboarded, all of HR, right? So like learning and development, talent management, DE and IB, all the things underneath that. And I've been here for about 2.5 years now and having a great time.
Love it.
Yeah.
I love it. Well, I think a lot of people, when they think about HR, I think they're a little bit confused as to everything that goes in HR. So I love that breakdown. Lots to talk about. I wanted to start with, so you guys are remote first. Can you explain to people the difference between remote first and then just companies that were maybe forced to allow people to work from home? Like what's the core difference there, like between like a remote first company and then a company that maybe just did work from home, let's say during the pandemic?
Yeah. So, well, to be fair, Vidyard, before my time, because I joined post-pandemic, but before my time was actually an in-office company. They're based in Kitchener-Waterloo. There is a really great sort of tech community in those areas. I think there's a lot of even our own founders. There's a lot of founders that, even went to Silicon Valley, came back, and like it's really important to them to build that tech ecosystem in Canada, the same way that we've built one obviously within Silicon Valley and all across now the country. And so they were primarily in person, and then the pandemic happened. And then of course that was really the trigger to obviously have everybody working from home. But I would say there's obviously just been like a total cultural shift. Definitely it was already started before I joined about 2.5 years ago, but then there was definitely much more of an intentional focus when I joined. A lot of conversations have been had on like, do we bring people back into the office? Do we go hybrid? What does it look like? And I think we decided in a very intentional way that we wanted to continue to be very intentional and methodical about designing more for being remote first. And really what that means is we try to think about how we build processes, how we operate, how we communicate with one another, like really the cultural component. And to me, culture is like, how do we work together? How do we support one another? How do we build together? How do we work together? How do we show respect for one another? It's not the pizza parties. It's not the lunches and free coffee, like free espresso.
The kombucha on tap.
Kombucha on tap. Yeah, it's not that. It's really the core of it is just, simplistically, it's how we work. The idea behind that is like designing for remote first, meaning people always think that there's always going to be people sitting behind a computer, and how do we create the best experience for those that are sitting on the computer and maybe sitting like we are behind, a Zoom, or in our case, the Riverside screen. And so that's really the logic behind being remote first. Do I think that we're perfect at it? No.
What are some things that you think you are doing well with it?
Yeah. I think some of the things we're doing well is, trying to think through our communication channels and like how we communicate, what we communicate, where we communicate, who needs to be in those communication channels, like whether it's through Slack, how we use Slack, what channels we use for what. It's interesting. This company's like Slack all day. It's like Slack first. We don't really use email. And this has been like the first for me.
Interesting.
This is my second tech company I've worked at. The last tech company, we used Slack, but then it moved over to Teams, but there was still a lot of email usage there. Whereas here it's like minimal email. And then mostly it's a lot more, that's more for external and then like very important things that we got to get to the whole organization. Maybe there's a lot more content.
Yeah.
Otherwise we use Slack. So I think there's like certain things that we're really trying to continue to be like intentional about is like, how are we communicating? What do we communicate? I think we're really great and getting better at documentation. Like we use Confluence as our place for where we're documenting a ton of information. How we've done, actually, my team has been working over the last couple quarters actually on Project Confluence. Like, how do we get better at the UI UX of Confluence? Like when you think about all these people that are coming on board and we are a remote first organization, how can they learn about our organization? There's the element of you're going to meet people, but there's also that element of like, you should be able to self-serve information in a remote environment because that's how you're going to be most efficient. And that's a core tenet.
That's one of the complaints of remote work that a lot of, I think particularly early career and entry level, I've heard more and more, people in that position saying, I don't want to Slack someone. I don't want to wait for a response. I just want to barge into their office and annoy them throughout the day.
I'm that person.
They don't really say that.
Barge into an office. They're like, hey, can I ask a quick question? I just like 2 seconds. I miss that. I miss those days because I came up in the working world in an office. And so what I've always known, and that only changed obviously through the pandemic. But then funny enough, I haven't really gone back to an office since because I left the company I was at during the pandemic, went to a tech company that was based in Colorado or Denver. And then I went from there and then I came to Vidyard and that's in Canada and I'm here. So it's funny as like as much of an extrovert as I am and as much as I love the like, I actually like recharge my batteries by like connecting with people and being with people.
Yeah, you're a true extrovert.
Yeah, I'm like well, it's interesting. Actually, I should caveat that by like the pandemic changed that for me a bit. Where I almost feel like sometimes I call myself a recovering extrovert but again, it's different. Being with people in person for me is different. That's more energy giving. Being behind the screen, and that's how I'm interacting with people, is definitely energy draining. And so I can be extroverted on a screen, but I think my extroversion is better in person. And I think that's where I get recharged. I don't get recharged by like, oh, let me get on a Zoom and talk to a bunch of people. I find it to be much more exhausting.
It is super draining. Yeah, any of those days where I've had like
I don't know,
8 calls in a row. There's something soul-sucking about that.
Yeah.
Now, do you guys get together as a team? Are you doing offsites? And what's your strategy with that? Because I've heard different approaches to that. I've heard quarterly, monthly. What's your kind of take on that?
We haven't always been consistent with that. And I think there's different reasons for that. I mean, we generally do, we have this company kickoff that we do at the start of our fiscal year. And we've done it both ways. We've done it, the first year I was here, we did some element of there. If you were in the vicinity of the office, you came in, and then those that were remote. And then we as an executive team traveled to major locations where we had like large swaths of employees and did like social.
Oh, that's cool.
Like that, right. And then last year we did it all in person and flew everybody into Kitchener-Waterloo and Toronto and like did it there. This year we're back to being primarily remote because we're trying to get back to growth. We're trying to be like really diligent and responsible with our investments that we're making. And for us, it just right now in this moment, the best decision for us was to do this virtually. But then finding other moments throughout the course of the year where like, hey, we want to get back to growth. Here's how we're going to do that. And like, once we do that, then like, let's bring everybody in and have a party and like make it a real big fun social connecting event. But there are teams that will also meet throughout the course of the year, like, maybe like a couple
like the engineering team.
Yeah, well, there are a lot of engineers that are in that vicinity. So those that can come, even on the sales side, those that are in the area will come into an office. They usually choose a day of the week. I think like Tuesdays is for the engineers, Thursdays is for our sales team. Those that can come in will come in.
I love that clear separation of sales and engineering.
I don't think that was intentional, but now we have like limited space. So it's like, because we've like also shrunk our space over the time since we're not using we weren't using 3 floors. So we've like tried to condense it down, consolidate a little bit. But yeah, that is pretty funny. You got your introverts and your extroverts.
Yeah, the engineer's like, I'm not going anywhere near those sales guys. Stand
You know,
them.
it's so interesting. We call them Vidyardians. Like this community is so awesome. Everybody is super like, it's just the one consistent message I've always heard in my time here is like how amazing it is to work with this community of employees. Everybody is super supportive, always willing to lean in. People really live by our values. It's important to them. They really anchor themselves across that. It matters to them. Whereas other companies, like people couldn't even tell you what the values were. But this is a place where
How do you instill that in people? How
yeah,
do you think that happened? I mean,
it's
obviously
a
you've
good
been there for a few
question.
years, um, but obviously being involved in people, it's like it's you mentioned even before we got online, like in being intentional with these things,
Yeah.
really being able to do that. So what are some tips for hiring leaders, founders, people who are looking to get a culture like that? What do you think?
Yeah. Again, I say we always have room for improvement, but I think some of the things we do really well through the recruitment process, we build out, we support our hiring managers and build out interview plans. And there's like question banks where you can pull questions that are directly related to like how these individuals demonstrate this particular value. Like, hey, here's what relentlessly resourceful means in the context of our business. Here's some of the behaviors that we look for. Like, and then there's like a different set of questions that you can ask to try. So when we come up with our interview plans, we have we have the technical person, we've got the culture person who's going to dig into some of the values, we've got someone that's going to dig into more of the competencies based off of the level or that we're bringing this individual in. And so we try to make sure that we weave that into that process so we get a good sense of like culturally, like from a values perspective, where do these people really, how do they align with our culture in that way? It's part of our onboarding. We use this tool called Kinfolk. Probably, I'm actually an advisor of them now, but
I
you
saw
probably,
that. Well
yeah,
done. That's
they
awesome.
are. They are. You think about them as they started off as one thing, but they've evolved into definitely more of like your AI HR partner. And there's something called a run book, and it's like our whole onboarding. There's like a whole like external sort of like website that they go to and it walks through and there's a whole subsection of like our values and like how we live by our values and there's videos on like how we live by that and like pictures of
Cool.
us like when we dressed up as the values when we launched our new values 2 years ago. And then we also do employee recognition or really any kind of like peer-to-peer leader recognition based off of our values. So like we use Lattice as our engagement and performance tool and we use HiBob as our HRIS, but Lattice has an area where you can give public feedback that's tied to a Slack channel called Praiseyard. And in that, you can recognize your peers, managers can recognize their directs, et cetera. Anybody can recognize anybody in a public forum. And then as you give that feedback, you can align it to, one or all or some amount of those values. And then we talk about those every other week. We do something called a Tuesday stand-up. And usually I'm the host, but I try to like circulate people across the people team. And that moment is like a 30-minute stand-up on Tuesdays to really talk about what's going on across the business and the community, what people programming and things are coming up. But we always do something called Wins of the Week. And Wins of the Week is where we talk about those praises that people have given to one another and talk about that value and how it's associated with that value. So that's another way. And then when we do CKO, and I think our two biggest events are CKO and then just like our annual sort of like holiday end of year wrap up party. And then we do a whole thing where you can nominate folks for the Vidyard Value Awards. And so they have to write up like how this person demonstrated and exemplified this value. And then we vote on it across our executive team and our senior strategic leadership team. We vote on it and then we announce that at that awards and like this is why these people got these awards. And then there's like, give them bonuses or gift cards. But we always make sure that it's like a tied to our values. So that's a few ways in which we try to really incorporate that into like just the normal sort of corporate rhythms and cadences that we have in the business.
Yeah, that's
Like
huge.
rituals, if you will.
Well, I love that idea of praising people for the values, but then really thinking about why that person exemplifies their values rather than just it being a generic kind of, hey, here's a smiley face, well done. It's like having people really think about it and how it ties into value. And I think then people are more likely to even remember it but then also like act along with the values as well, which, I've worked for some large companies that have values. But I think when you're really, really large, it's really hard to really instill those values into like the daily life of the company. It's really hard. I wonder if there's like a tipping point where those types of things, or maybe with like organizations, there's like certain points you get where it's like I just feel like it's so hard to instill that because there's so many people that were involved in that. Like you need the management on board with that. But I also one thing I want to highlight that I think is crucial in this whole process, this whole idea about training interviewers. You said you have an interview plan. How crucial is that? Because I feel like a lot of companies do not train hiring managers on how to interview. And I know this from being a recruiter. What's your process like?
I don't,
I don't
so
know.
no, we built interview training but it's not like something that we're able to do regularly. And like we have like I said, we have a ton of like work that we've done and like documentation that we have for people to really understand our process, understand, how to interview, how we structure our interviews. Because we're all so small and scrappy, I say we're small, like, 150, 160 employees. The way that my recruiters operate are like real partners of the business, right? And so they, a lot of what we're doing, because it's sometimes hard to get managers in a room and really focus on like training on how to interview. It's like on our roadmap of things we want to continue to do. But what we do is like make sure that, okay, you've got this new hire. We do a kickoff. It's like there's a whole form, like a requisition form. So we always know like, okay, here's what this role is going to be. These are all the responsibilities. We make sure that it's like leveled and titled appropriately because that can change when you're backfilling even. And then that recruiter works with the hiring manager and partners with the hiring manager. I'm like, okay, here's the process. Here's how we're going to go do this. Here's the template for your interview plan. Here's how we structure it. So we do a lot more like the hands-on training, like in the moment, because I think that's when it matters most. Like someone that isn't in the throes of like, hiring someone right now and you try to train them, they're going to forget it.
Yeah.
And so I've definitely like enabled and empowered my recruitment team to like always remember that. It's like you can train all day, but ultimately remember you're always going to come back to this, and it's going to be a lot of hands-on training and a lot of hands-on coaching with your hiring managers. And so then when you start working with specific hiring managers that hire a lot, they just know. Now they know, and it's like this well-oiled machine. And so then it's like, okay, hey, here's the interview plan. We make sure to put it back on the hiring manager. Hey, this is the plan. Here's what I'm thinking. Take some time, take a look at it. You need it, but what we do is guide them. You need someone that's going to be your technical recruiter. You're going to need someone that's going to be your recruiter for like culture and values. You need someone who's going to be like.
I even love that. I've not ran into too many companies that have a technical interviewer and then a culture interview. That's
our. I will tell you, our
you came up with that. Was that just before you were there, or you came up with that?
No, I would say our engineering recruitment process, like that process has always been really, really great. And we've refined it. We've simplified it. I think it was a little heavy when I first came on board, and we've needed to simplify. But they've always had like a technical, you have your original screen that the recruiter does, and then you bring them in and there's like a technical interviewer. You might have one or two people. There's like a coding exercise. There's like a actual hands-on keyboard platform that we use where they have to go in and actually do like this like exercise to see like what their, literacy and their proficiency is in that particular area. And then they go into like the peer interviewer and whatnot. And so I think we've evolved that process quite a bit over the last couple of years, especially when we built out when I came on board. A big thing for me was to build out a job architecture with like really clear leveling, really clear competencies on like, what does it mean to be at that level in this business? And then functionally, what does that mean? And so we've done a lot to really build the framework for like competency-based interviewing. And so that's partly where that sort of came from. And then it just has sort of evolved from there. I would say it's feedback from me, but it's feedback. We've gotten great feedback from hiring managers. And also like my recruitment team is like, this is, I will tell you, one of the best recruitment teams I've ever worked with. And it's interesting, if I think about the recruitment, a small team, like I had 4 or 5 when I started. Now I'm down to like 2 recruiters and then a recruitment leader who also will recruit for like senior level roles. Probably the most, I would say, like the least experience in the context of like years of experience in recruitment, if you look at it from end to end, but they are the most passionate. Like they care so much about the candidate experience and about the people we're bringing into this organization. It is so inspiring. It's so fun to work with them because they care so much and they love people. Like they love bringing people into the organization. They build this great relationship. I will tell you, Joel, and I'm not exaggerating, the number one thing that I hear, because I now, like, as we've also iterated on our onboarding process a number of times, like I said, we use Kinfolk to automate some elements of it. And then there's the people element to it. It'll automatically schedule my meet and greet with every single new hire in this organization. That automatically gets scheduled within the first, 7 days that someone's on board. And then I meet with them. And the first thing that they will tell me every time now, this has been about almost a year that I've been doing this. I have to tell you, Sarika, oh my God, I worked with so-and-so, or I worked with so-and-so, like my, recruiter, like best recruiter I've ever worked with, like best candidate experience I've ever had, like communicated with every step of the way. They used our Vidyard product. They used they used the power of video when they couldn't get on the phone with me to like just walk me through what the steps were. So I always knew where I was in the process. And they also gave feedback, like where they gave feedback and tangible feedback. Hey, here's what you did really well. And here's what you might want to think about. Even people that we have like declined, like that maybe didn't make it through to the end of our recruitment process, have found me on LinkedIn and DM'd me to say, that was like the nicest way to be rejected from a job ever, because it was odd. Like, yeah, it sounded like a note to them, but there was a video that was from one of the recruiters like, hey, sorry, you're not going to move on in this process, but like here, I know how hard the job search process is right now. Here's, a code to use Vidyard, for 3 months for free. Here's how you could use the power of video in your job search. Here's like, if you want to work
Cool.
remotely, here's some
I
job
love
boards
that.
for like, just trying to think about
Caring.
yeah, like just be a human in the process. We all know how hard it is. And let me tell you, Joel, it's not that hard. It's not that hard to do. It's easy to do. It's easy to build it in your process. And if you're using an ATS, which I know a lot of companies use some element of an ATS, most of them have some automated way that you can just respond.
Yeah.
And you can humanize the note, even if it's automated, you can humanize that. It's not that hard.
A lot of this stems, I think, from leadership, right?
Yeah.
Leadership in the recruitment function or the HR function, leadership with the company. And it's a team sport. And I think what's happening a lot, obviously I'm biased towards recruiters because I just love recruiting. But I've heard a lot recently that recruiters, they might show up too late to calls. They seem stressed. They seem all these types of things. And I think it's easy for candidates to go, wow, those recruiters are terrible people. And then almost for like the org to do the same thing. Oh, those recruiters. But when you have a leader like yourself that actually understands it and cares and sees a value in a candidate experience, when you have a company that gets it, it just it makes everybody's life better, right? And it sounds like your recruiters are great recruiters, but they're also in that environment where it's like clearly you guys get it. Where I just think a lot of companies right now, they're just not supporting the recruiting team to give them the opportunity to do stuff. Because I love that, like adding like using your tool or your product to actually provide value through the process, but then also for people who don't make it through, being like, hey, here's some tips on how you can use our tool to help you. I think that's
right.
amazing.
I mean,
one of the coolest things I've ever heard. Actually.
Yeah, we're testing out our avatars. We have AI avatars that we've created, and we're even testing that out. Like, they don't always need to hear directly from us. If they just need to know, like, here's the process is going to be. On my avatar, I can write the script and my avatar can do that. And it's like, I don't have to the team doesn't have to do much. And then that way you're prioritizing the in-person the actual like face-to-face conversation. That's more about like coaching them through, the next interview, and here's who you're going to meet and here's what you're going to expect. Let me answer your questions. That an avatar can't do that, right? That's the humanistic, that's the personalization that a human can give you. But there's also personalization you can do with an avatar in a moment where you don't need the actual human on the other end of it, right? There's ways to use it if people just like open their minds a little bit. Because I know AI is scary. There's so many reasons why it's scary, but there's also so many reasons why it could be a really beautiful thing. We just have to be eyes wide open. And as HR leaders and executives, and I wouldn't even say that, business leaders and business executives, no, we just need to be honest about what AI is and what it isn't, and be clear like why people are fearful of it. And be honest.
Why do you think people are fearful of AI? Like, what's your
because we have these big, you've heard from all these big companies, these large companies that were like, we are going to cut 20% of our talent because we need that money and that investment to reinvest into AI.
Yeah,
right? That didn't really do much in the ways of like wanting to play around with AI. It's like this new thing, this new innovation is going to take my job from me. And so now people are just spiraling, because that's like really, you heard about OpenAI and ChatGPT and people kind of played around with it. But then like the immediate thing that happened
is everybody flooded LinkedIn with their action figures.
Firing people. Right. The layoffs started happening.
They did their action figures. You don't remember that last week? I mean, no, you're right.
Well, so my daughter is a competitive cheerleader, and there's this Facebook group. It's called the Crazy Moms of Cheer. I just learned about it recently. I didn't even know about it. I only learned about it like a couple months ago. And so I'm in it. And today I open it and I see people are like creating these like AI animated versions of their daughters in their cheer uniforms, as well as like the Barbie doll version of it. And I'm like, oh my God, people are like, how do I do this? How do I use it in ChatGPT? And what's a prompt? And what, but also I'm like, hey, just a heads up, like if you're using a free version of it, like, you're putting your child's picture out in a way, just be careful. Like
Oh my
it's really
gosh.
cute and fun, but also be careful, like what you're putting in there and like what, okay. I know it's cute and fun.
Well, I saw that meme. It was like LinkedIn, it was that classic meme of like the guy with his girlfriend and he's like looking at another girl, his head turned. It's like that classic meme. And then it was like,
Oh, yes.
it was like privacy and data, LinkedIn users, and then like the Chat GPT thing. It totally is like that. It's like,
But it is kind of like that. It's funny because it's true.
and I just heard they're doing they're going to be doing like a social media network as well, ChatGPT, but that's kind of a side note. We were talking before and you brought this to my attention. Shopify's CEO, they, basically made an announcement saying, before you add to headcount, and this is a gist of it that I got, before you add to your headcount, you've almost got to prove that AI cannot do the job, or you got to justify it, right? So given that there's so much fear around AI, walk us through a little bit about like your thought process. You're obviously, you shared with me before the call as well that you are leading the AI efforts and like how you're going to implement AI in your business at Vidyard. So walk us through like some of the things you're thinking about and what you think other people need to be thinking about, both from like leadership and even like employees. Like what should they be aware of, and what would you advise for them to be doing?
No, it's a great question. And I would say there's, I know we talked about this also, like there's no real playbook for this yet because we're all sort of in the throes of it, trying to figure out how to do this and what makes sense for our organizations. I think, and so I wish that he had like reframed the way that he talked about that, because that's what everybody pulled away was like, well, I got to justify headcount now of like how
Was this an internal memo too, or like did it
it
get
wasn't.
leaked?
Yeah. So what it was an entire memo that was getting leaked. And so he was like, hey, this is getting leaked anyway. So I might as well just share it out there. And so he shared it on whatever, Twitter, X, whatever the hell they're calling it these days. I'm not on it. So, but it was shared in we have like an executive Slack channel, and like one of the executive leaders like shared it with us. And so like I read it and I posted about it a couple of times last week. And I sort of winced at it at first, like, oh my God, what? Like justify. I spent so many years trying to justify a head count. And then I had to read it a couple of times. And I had to read it in also the context of like what we were talking about already as internally in our own business is like, there is a lot of beauty. I get a lot of lift and beauty out of using ChatGPT. And I use the various sort of models within ChatGPT for various reasons. And it's like my best friend. It's my thought partner. And so like I use it for a lot of different reasons and to help, right? And so it's like, I do understand that there's there's so many great use cases. There's so many ways to like get lift and productivity and output out of ChatGPT, but no one taught me how to do it. I have had to like play around with it because I'm just a curious person anyways. And like, I always want to know. And like, we're layering AI capabilities into our product as well. And it's like, for me to get smart about what we're talking about in the context of our own product, I got to understand what it is and what it isn't. Right. And so how I looked at it, I chose not to just think, I wish he would have actually with the headcount just been like, not tell me me how AI can't do the job, but flip it on its head. Like what can AI actually do? And what can it not do? And like, can you think of a different way that headcount can be used? Because I don't think AI is going to replace every headcount. Like do I think that AI is going to take my job as an HR executive? I don't think so. I think that would be really hard to do because I think there's a strategic element.
I'm just imagining like the employee engagement aspect even, or like just like when someone has a problem, like they want to go to a person. No one's going to.
There's certain elements where you need a person. Now, do I think that there's a place for AI in HR? 100%. Like when I first started, we had an HR coordinator, and it was because it was a lot of like administrative type of tasks that take up a lot of time for an individual to do. And it's like nice to have that. Recruiting coordinators is another area where, there's elements of what a recruiting coordinator or what an HR coordinator does that AI, and now there's difference, right? There's Gen AI, like ChatGPT, you ask questions, it can spit some things out and you can reason with it. And then there's agentic AI, which is sort of like the latest thing of what's coming out. And there's a like
Yeah.
AI really, you can build workflows where AI can do some of this work for you in the
Yeah, it's
context
like that
of workflows.
co-pilot
The
versus like
co-pilot,
something
right?
that's
So there's sort of
actually doing it for you.
right. You use it for different reasons. And I do think where agentic AI is going, and I tell you this because I'm using it, I'm building this right now alongside our partners at Kinfolk. And, we're looking at some of these like everyday workflows, for example. And I'll get to my point in terms of how I look at this from a broader organizational context, because I got to eat my own dog food, right? I've been doing this with my own team for solid 8-9 months now, and been thinking about, okay, here's how you use ChatGPT. Here's why I want you to think about using it. Hey, TA, use it this way. Hey, HR, use it this way. Hey, use it like, let's play around with it. And then we brought in Kinfolk and we were like, wow. And then now they're doing workflows and agentic AI. So now we're like, okay, what are these like everyday workflow items? Like one example, employee needs a letter of employment because they're going to get a mortgage. They don't need a person for that. And sometimes they're waiting the whole day or 2 days for someone to be able to do that. Why not just build a workflow in the context? We have, hi, Bob, connected with Kinfolk, go into Slack. Hey, I need a letter of employment. Okay, great. What information do you need in that? This is what I need. Great. I'll get it back to you. And then within 5 minutes, 10 minutes, however long, it can just spit that letter out. And now no one from my team had to do it. And then the employee got what they needed. It's an important part of their experience, an employee's experience, to be able to buy a house and needing the information they need. But that an employee's experience doesn't always need a person at the end of it. That was a great example of you don't need me giving you that letter. You just need it. You just need the damn letter.
Well, it's
right?
like you said it's like the rejection for a job.
Exactly.
It needs to show that you care and that you're giving communication and giving people a heads up on where they're at.
Right.
But it doesn't necessarily. And for a lot of people, actually, when I've done polls on LinkedIn, a lot of people prefer it not to be a person because, it's like, it's rejection. It sucks.
It sucks.
Some recruiters be like, oh, I call every candidate. I'm like, I don't want a phone call from you rejecting me. I just want to know, did I get the job or not?
Right.
Yeah,
And maybe
deal it.
some feedback as to maybe why I didn't,
Yeah, and
like,
if I got some questions, I'll call you, okay? You don't need to harass me.
Right. There's always a way to humanize even through technology, even when it's not a person, right? And so because I've been doing this with my own team now for a number of months, and I've been so lucky to be able to partner with an AI startup that's like a great partner to us. And, I'm learning a lot about how to think about it. What I'm now thinking, I'm going to be leading, yes, our company priority on AI and automate. It's AI and automation, right? And those don't always have to be AI driving automation, right? And an enablement and transformation across the business. But part of what I'm looking at is, okay, where it stemmed from was like, we know we've got business processes, whether it's, in marketing and sales and R&D, the cross-functional processes, right? We know we have opportunities to improve upon. There's business process improvement that's like definitely needed. And we also want to look at it from the lens of, are there parts of our processes that we can automate, or can we layer in the use of an AI tool to help us be more efficient and get more of that productivity lift? Okay. Will that at a certain point in time, could that replace a head or two? Maybe. Depends on the process. A great way is like, a lot of folks, a lot of these, like a lot of SaaS companies you have like your technical support team, right? And you have questions about the product. That's a great place where for like, tier 4, tier 3 level type of questions, AI chatbots could probably help you. If you have a lot of really great documentation, if it's been learning and being trained in the context of your business, a chatbot could probably answer some of those like, tier 1, whatever, tier 4, tier 3 questions. Now you get a little bit more complex. You're dealing with more complex enterprise level clients. There's a lot more integrations involved. Yeah. Then you might need a person, but then maybe you don't need those 1 or 2 heads doing that. And then do you have to exit those people? Not necessarily.
Yeah.
Maybe you redesign their job to be much more strategic and focusing on like our more complex and larger level customers who have more complexity in the way that they're using our product in the context of integrations across other go-to market tools. So you need a person to really help you understand and strategize that, right? That's part of what we're thinking through, right? That was where it started from. But then it's like, okay, but if we're going to talk about AI transformation, and then Toby's, CEO of Shopify's memo comes out and is like, everybody needs to be using AI. You need to think AI first. You need to think about how it can give you like, I don't actually disagree with him. I don't actually disagree that people like a year ago, I can understand it felt scary. We're a year and some change into this. You got to lean in. You got to
Yeah.
play around with it. You got to understand it because it's not going anywhere.
No.
And my point is that like, I want for the people inside of our organization to build the skills to understand how to use it to give you that lift in a day. Does that mean though, just by telling someone to go use it, that they're going to know how to use it? No, because not everybody's built the same. Not everybody is
Yeah.
curious.
If you're curious like yourself, you're
Right.
gonna naturally play around and try and figure out things. But there are, I'd say most people, it's more like, hey, just show me how to get
A
started.
little bit.
Let
Guide
me do
me
it
in
in a safe environment so I don't feel like
right.
I'm messing up, even though you can't really like mess up that bad.
Right. And also
But I want to know
everyone
the
should have a
basics.
license, right?
The
And not
license, yeah, making it accessible for people.
make it accessible for people to play around with it, guide them, teach them like there's got to be an enablement component. Like, here's what a prompt is. Here's how you write it. Here's what you like. And it sort of builds on it over time. And then people naturally, as they start to get comfortable knowing how to use it, then they naturally will like, oh, okay. I get it. Now what if I do this? And what if I do this? And then create a channel where people are sharing how they're
Right.
using it, their wins and their mistakes that they're making or what they're learning in it. And then you're learning and building out loud, right? That's the element that we haven't done yet I think groups like our R&D team has been really great about it. They've been doing this for about a year before it was been a company priority. And they're definitely, you would think you'd think every software developer is like, oh my God, this is amazing. I'm going to use it. Not true. Not
Mm.
everybody's been on board with it from the beginning. People are fearful for different reasons. What are they fearful of? There's the job aspect, but then there's also the ethical considerations. There's the environmental considerations, things that I didn't even know. Did you know that every time you run a query inside of ChatGPT, it takes like some amount, liters of water to cool down the data centers?
Yeah.
I didn't know that. I had no idea. So how much water are we using to cool down these data centers? How many data centers do we have in the country? How much energy is it using? How much is that pulling and pushing back into the environment? Like, people care, and young talent, especially your Gen Z and your millennial, they care about the environment. They care about the planet. They care. And so then you got to layer on that element. If you're trying to, what I'm hearing Toby doing inside of his business is he put out a mandate. Everybody needs to be using AI, needs to figure out how to use it, play around with it, right? Great. Just because he told people to do it doesn't mean they're going to go do it. And you think about change management and you think about that journey that people are on, you got to guide them and you got to help them. And people are going to ask questions. So I'm thinking about, okay, I know I want to do it here. And I also want people to play around with it. How do I think about enablement? How do I think about, like, have we thought about our ethical considerations? How are we protecting the data? How are we thinking about the environment? Does that matter right now? Maybe not, but what could we be doing to think, at least have it in the back of our minds, even if we don't have some big plan or some ESG plan? I'm not even considering that. We're a startup, right? And so it matters. Like, when you're a smaller startup versus a large, huge organization like Shopify, it's going to look different. But these are the types of questions. Then it's like, do we have all the talent internally to drive this type of transformation? There are new roles being created. There's AI ops roles. There's analyst roles. Like, there are a lot of roles being created now in the context of AI and how to drive that transformation inside of your business. And so you got to phase it out. I have to think, then that's what I'm trying to understand. Is like, I'm trying to get in alignment with our executive team to understand, like, this is the breadth and depth of where we could go with this. What are we trying to solve for right now? And then I can think about all the ethical, the things around that. And then what are we trying to get to tomorrow and the next day? And then I phase that out. I'm a project manager, a program manager by heart. Like, that's what I did for a long time in the context of like even consulting. And so my mind is automatically going to think like, okay, I got to define the scope and then I got to plan. Because if I want to go, I'm going to go slow to go fast. And in order for me to go fast and bring this organization along, I'm upfront alignment first on what's in, what's out. Then I can design against that. Then I take it and I think about who are all the people that are going to be involved in this effort? What do I need? What resources do I need? And then how do I and then there's the change aspect. How do I bring people along on this journey? And people are going to be all different parts of this change journey. How do I think about all of those different people and what I need to do for those different personas to bring those people along? Who are my change agents who are already doing it? How do I get them involved to help drive this change? And then there's the actual, like, okay, where are those business processes? How do we assess? What do we got? What are we prioritizing? What we can actually do? What's the ROI going to be on that? And then we got to build the plan and go implement. And then it's ongoing execution, right? It sounds simplistic.
I mean, that did not sound simplistic.
Oh, okay.
That sounded like, and I think that's what people got to also need to realize. Like, you read the headlines, and headlines are headlines, right? The headlines are designed to get you to click and read. A lot of this is change that's going to be ongoing for, who knows how long. It could be months, years. I know this, that I've got a friend that works at a really large, what do they do? I think they're an insurance company, health insurance. They're not allowed to use AI at all in anything. And I think a lot of the enterprise companies, I mean, they're obviously
That's
building
right.
AI into their processes, but no one's allowed to play with AI with their work. And if they are doing it, it can't be on the work computer. So if you're thinking about like doing a document, even with ChatGPT to summarize, you got to do it on your personal computer and then email yourself, kind of thing. So
It makes sense though, right?
it does make sense. But
Yeah.
even
And
that's
like,
why I tell people, even with your personal life, you got like, I talked to my mom. I took her to the airport the other day, and she was like, "I use AI all the time." She's like, "I put together a health plan, and I put together all this stuff." And I was like, "That's crazy." She's like, "Yeah, I use." She's like, "I just use Chat GPT now instead of Google." She's like, "I just that it's my go-to now for all of this stuff. I do it for summarizing things." And someone told me a long time ago, that's the mentality you want, is like play around with it and you're going to get better. I just think a lot of us are afraid to make mistakes and fail. But with something like this, it's not a failure thing. It's like you figure it out, you see where it works. And then the other big piece is you got to know what your problems are. Like, what are you trying to solve
what are
for?
we
And I
trying to
think
solve for today? Right. You're not going to solve everything overnight. And I'm not going to solve everything in this sort of like priority overnight. But what am I trying to solve for right now? Like what's the
I
most
love
important?
that.
And then and then map that out, right? And then but talk to the organization. Hey, I know we got to figure out X, Y, we're going to do A, B, and C. Here's why. But I also know I got to figure out X, Y, and Z. I'm not going to have those answers today, but we're working on it. But here's what we're going to do. Here's the guardrails we're going to put around this particular, arena of what we're going to focus on. And then we'll get into the next thing. And that's also okay. I think it's easier in a startup to do that. I think in a larger enterprise organization like that, I get it because there's a lot of red tape. There's a lot of inputs, outputs. But I would also say enterprise level organizations do need to figure this out fast. They do need to, whether they have to build their own sort of like chat GPT sort of platform, or they figure out, how to protect the information that they're putting in there. Like they do need to figure it out. It's not going
No.
anywhere.
And they gotta get their employees involved too. Like, it's not fair to some employees to like leave them out. So I love what you said. Like,
Yeah, we need to build the skills of tomorrow. Like we gotta
exactly.
help. That's to me, that's part of my job, right? The enablement piece and the like, how do I teach people? How do I bring people along, or how do I bring in the resources that will help teach these? That I think that is part of every HR executive's role, any business executive's role is like, how do I enable, how do I upskill this organization for the skills that we're gonna need for today and for tomorrow?
Yeah,
And that's part of what I'm trying to figure out also is what are those skills and how do I build that level of AI literacy inside of this business?
I love that. Well, and I think that's the other mentality that a lot of leaders have is like, how do we use AI to cut costs and cut people? But it's like what they kind of miss is if you empower people, you cut costs. If you empower people, you increase profit. It's not all about just reducing headcount. In fact, I think that's a little bit of I think, who was it? It was the Klarna CEO, right? He was like, "Oh yeah, we're going to cut the whole customer service team with our AI agents," and then they suddenly realized there was a quality assurance issue. So now they got to go back, hire more customer service people, and hire quality assurance. But if they if you had your mentality of, "Hey, how can we use these agents to make our current people even better?" So we could provide even better service. Maybe there's a few people that lose their jobs in there because you don't have the volume of work. That's okay. But then you can make your people that you have like so great at their job. And if there's complex issues that they need to deal with their customers, it's like you're empowering your people. And then if there's those tier one, tier two, I even love that fact of you like looking at each problem and going, all right, maybe that's an AI, something with AI could help with, versus no, we really need a
That's the
human.
assessment part, right? That's the current
It's
state
huge.
assessment. There's the tech inventory, like what tools do we have? What has AI? What doesn't? What are we using? What are we not? But there's also the element of like, what's our business process
Yeah.
inventory? Like what processes do we have? And can we get more lift and output and, and like get more productivity output if we were to layer in AI or automation or doing some kind of improvement and maybe maybe there is like you take people out of the equation and repurpose those people elsewhere. But like, can we do that? Where can we do that? And how do we prioritize what's going to give us the most bang for our buck? And that's sort of like, that'll be actually the next conversation I have with like my functional like leaders is like, okay, I'm going to meet with, go to market. I'm going to meet with R&D. I'm going to meet with ops. I'm going to meet with my own team. My team and I, we've been doing this already. And that's the next thing is we're going to workshop that and dig in and understand like, what do we think? Where could we go? And then we'll prioritize as a broader business, what we prioritize like across and where we'll invest.
I love that. I love it. Well, Look, this is it's been amazing. A ton of value here. I think for anybody who is even just thinking they're kind of on the edge and maybe they are feeling fearful around AI and those types of things. I just think your mentality is spot on. Where can people connect with you? Where's the best place for people to connect with you
Yeah.
online? Is it
LinkedIn's easy.
Snapchat? Oh,
Uh,
LinkedIn.
I don't even, do I have it on my phone? I don't even, I'm so bad. Like, I need limited social media because I will get distracted. Like, I don't even have TikTok on my phone. And I
It's
know
all
that's
good.
like the where I gotta go. I gotta make videos, but I'm like, oh, I just can't. I feel like I just got used to like posting more on LinkedIn like late
Yeah,
last
you
year.
post a ton of good content.
I try to make it, like engaging, but also like helpful. Like, can I share things that you could just like take and actually go help and use and like help you do your job? Like, because that's what's helpful for me. And so yeah, you can find me Sarika Lamont on LinkedIn. I am planning to share out loud this whole like journey that I'm on with AI enablement and
I love that.
transformation of our own business. So I will start sharing probably sometime next week what I'm learning, like testing and learning, and in hopes that this will help other HR leaders and just business leaders in general, like help them on their journey inside of their businesses.
Amazing. Well, guys, I would definitely go connect. And then also Vidyard, we want to connect with Vidyard as well. Go to the career page there as well as see what jobs they have open. And look, it's been a great conversation. I've learned a lot. I think that even just kind of going back to the remote work, your perspective on that, I just think is spot on. And I love that. Last piece here. If there's one piece of advice that you would have for somebody early on in their career, whether they're in HR, recruitment, any field, like what's that one piece of advice that you would
Yeah.
give to anyone listening?
Understand the business that you're in.
Mm,
It's not just about learn the industry, understand it. If you're in a product based organization, really understand your product, but understand who your business is, what challenges you're trying to solve for, what the company strategy is, and get curious because no matter what job you do, whether it's HR, whether it's sales, whatever, you're undoubtedly going to be interacting with all different types of folks and different, functions of the business. And you'll only be better at what you're doing in your day-to-day role if you have a broader view of what's going on across the business. And I think for me as an HR leader, as an HR executive, I think that's probably the biggest thing that I tell a lot of HR folks is learn the business because that's how you're inevitably going to be a really strategic partner for the business is if you understand what their challenges are.
absolutely love it. I love it. Understand the business, understand the problems that need to be solved. And I think that's amazing. So,
It'll solve them.
well, I love it. Well, guys, go check out Sarika's profile on LinkedIn. Go follow her. And look, we're really happy that you're still here if you are here. And guys, we'll be back next week with another episode as well. And as always, if you guys have questions for me, if you want to connect, you can go to www.therealistrecruiter.com. And we will see you guys next week.
Thanks for having me, Joel.
Yeah,
Appreciate it.
great. Great to have you.